What's going on, guys? We are back with another Understanding the Officer video. In this video, we are going to be covering Warrior Whiz. Now, Warrior Whiz is a interesting officer because he is a Generation 1 officer that was not added at the very beginning of the game. He actually was introduced in 2023 through a limited time event. He's got an interesting skill set. He also pairs well with another officer specifically that we will talk about. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to jump in and cover everything regarding Warrior Whiz. Welcome back, guys. I hope you are all doing wonderful. I hope life is going well for each and every one of you. We're going to be breaking down everything to do with Warrior Whiz in this video, but before we get started, if you guys are getting value out of and enjoying these Understanding the Officer videos, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel if you are not already so you don't miss any future uploads. Let's try to get this video to at least 100 likes. Now let's go ahead, jump in, and start talking about Warrior Whiz. All right, so Warrior Whiz, like I said, is a Generation 1 officer. He was a limited time officer that was added in a special event or a collaboration event back in 2023. It was an enjoyable event. It was the first of its kind in Warpath. We haven't had, well, I take that back. We have had one other event recently similar to that offered a limited time officer tactic, but in regard to officers, he's the only officer currently in Warpath that is tied to a limited time collaboration event. And being that he is a Generation 1 officer, he is tagged as a versatile officer, but he is honestly pretty much a tank officer, all things considering. And he also is at the very top of the food chain when it comes to Generation 1 officers, especially in regard to damage coefficient. All right, so starting with Marco's first skill, his tactical skill, Marco sprays the enemy down with Fire Torrent, dealing damage to the enemy. Damage coefficient is 1500. That is at the peak of damage coefficient. Like I said, most damage coefficient ranges for Generation 1 officers between 1050 and 1300. So that 1500 puts him, again, at the very, very top of the food chain. He also drives his SV-001 Metal Slug towards the target troop, dealing damage coefficient 300, and reducing their damage resist by 15%, lasts for 4 seconds. Now, Warrior Whiz offers a couple of special skills too. The first one being increases the chance of this officer's troop landing a critical strike with its normal attack by 10%, so that's a win there. And then the second one, which is definitely the more popular one, whenever this officer's troop attacks an enemy ground force troop, it has a 15% chance of resetting the target's load time and preventing them from attacking for 1 second. Can trigger once every 8 seconds. And then he's also got big value here with his fourth skill, which is an offensive-based skill. Increases the damage intensity of this officer troop by 15%. That's pretty standard, but where he starts to creep into a higher value level officer is the second part of that, which increases the damage intensity by an extra 4.5% if the target troop is at least 1 map grid away from its target, which gives us a total of 19.5% increase in damage intensity, which is really, really good. All right, now here's the big question. Is Warrior Whiz worth it? In the early game, absolutely. Absolutely, he positively is. Is he worth it in the mid game? 100%. His damage coefficient is comparable to most tank Generation 2 and 3 officers. Is he valuable in the late game? That's where it gets a little bit, the water gets muddied, so to speak. Can you still absolutely find a place for him? 100%. He's definitely going to maintain and retain some value even in the late game. However, that's going to depend on your unit setup. If you were running, like I've talked about with other officers, if you were running a unique setup, something like 3, 4, or even 5 tank units, for example, Warrior Whiz is definitely, at least currently in Warpath, going to be one of the officers in your lineup. If you run 1, maybe 2 tanks, there are definitely other overall better options, especially now that we've had Generation 4 officers get introduced into the game. He's going to start to get phased out. So it really depends and comes down to your setup and how many tanks you're specifically going to be running. But even if you don't run a very unique setup and he's really not in your lineup in a main officer role, he has got so much value through the officer skill training system with his 3 passive skills. His second skill, his third skill, and his fourth skill all three of those skills can be used in some form or fashion during the through the officer skill training system. So there is a huge amount of value there. Now, when it comes to potential officer pairings, we're going to talk about one specifically, and I want you to remember the name Peregrine Falcon. Another officer that was added through that same limited time collaboration event as Warrior Whiz. We have also had Bomb Princess get added to the game. And we can take a look here at her second skill, which is a protection-based skill. And it says, increases the damage resist of this officer's troop by 15%. When paired with an officer with the Peregrine Falcon skill, also increases the chance of landing a critical strike with normal attacks by 4%. So again, they can work independently. They can be paired on units with other officers independently, but if paired together, you are going to get a little bit of additional value from Bomb Princess that will also benefit Warrior Whiz. So that is why I'm saying if you run multiple tanks, like 3, 4, or definitely 5 tanks, they are definitely going to still make sense as viable officers for you, at least as of this point in the game. And if you pair them together, you are going to get some additional value. So in a nutshell, Warrior Whiz is worth it. I think all that you guys, especially if you are a newer player coming into Warpath, all that you need to basically make a decision on before investing into Warrior Whiz is ask yourself, am I going to commit fully to my tank setup? Meaning, am I going to develop multiple different tank units? Am I going to commit to tank research? If the answer to that is yes, you're going to have a place for Warrior Whiz. If you want to run something of a more hybrid setup, a couple of artillery, maybe an anti-tank gun, maybe an infantry and a couple of tanks, Warrior Whiz is probably not an officer you want to fully invest in and fully awaken, but you definitely want to take a look at one of his passive skills, or multiple, depending on, if you want to mix and match depending on the situation. You can definitely invest in his passive skills to get additional value through the officer skill training system. So as always, not a long video, but wanted to get to the point and give you guys the breakdown on Warrior Whiz and if he's going to be worth your time and investment. If you've got any thoughts, opinions, questions, whatever it might be, drop them in the comments below. I'll be taking a look. I'll try to respond to them as they come in if I am able to. And if I am not able to, I am sure that somebody else in the community will give you their reply and their thoughts and opinions to your questions, thoughts, or concerns. If you have stuck around and made it this far into the video, if you've got access to Discord and are not already in our community Discord server, the link to that is going to be in the description of the video. Click on that link. It'll take you right into the community Discord server. Whether you are a new player and have questions, want to learn some more, or if you're a veteran player and just want to come hang out and get to know more people in the community, it doesn't matter. Absolutely everybody is welcome. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch the video, and we'll see you on the next one.